I want you to hit me as hard as you can.
I'm Dylan Bowden for the JoBlo Network, and this is From Page to Screen. For this installment, we'll be looking back at Marvel Studios' take on their star-spangled hero, 2011's Captain America, the First Avenger. Co-created in 1941 by writer Joe Simon and artist Jack Kirby, Captain America first appeared in Timely Comics' Captain America Comics Issue 1. Volunteering for a secret experiment headed by scientist Dr. Joseph Reinstein, frail art student Steve Rogers was injected with a top-secret experimental serum that increased his muscle mass and enhanced his body to peak human condition. Immediately after the experiment was a success, an undercover Nazi agent sprang forth, killing Dr. Reinstein. Steve Rogers thwarted the agent, but destroyed the research. Unable to replicate the serum, Steve Rogers is the only super soldier of his kind, taking on the mantle of Captain America. By his second appearance, his look was changed to incorporate his iconic round shield. With America not officially entering the war until 1941, the character initially only went up against enemies stateside, varying from spies and conspirators to alien invasions, until eventually taking the stories overseas. The very first screen adaptation of the character was a 15-chapter serial released in 1944 titled Captain America. It starred Dick Basile as both Captain America and his alter ego, with his name and costume really being the only things that resembled the comics. After the war ended, interest in the character began to wane, and even though there were attempts to keep him relevant fighting communist Russia, the series was cancelled in 1954 with issue 78. After successes with new characters like Iron Man, Hulk and Thor, Marvel decided to thaw the character out in 1964 in the Avengers issue 4. Here it's revealed that Captain America and his sidekick Bucky were attempting to stop an explosive-filled plane from launching. Leaping on top of it together, Cap lost his grip and plummeted below into the Arctic waters, while Bucky bravely sacrificed his life to stop it from reaching its target. Becoming frozen in a state of suspended animation, Cap lay frozen for decades, until Namor the Submariner discovers him in a fit of rage, dislodging the ice and leaving him to be discovered by the Avengers. Awakening in the modern day, he resumes the moniker of Captain America and leads the newly assembled team of Earth's mightiest superheroes. Another adaptation of the character would appear in 2 TV movies. In 1979, that saw Steve Rogers as an ex-Marine making a living as an artist. Critically injured in an accident, he's administered an experimental super steroid and becomes Captain America. In 1990, the first full-length movie named Captain America made it to cinemas. While incredibly low budget, it was fairly faithful to the source material, seeing Steve Rogers injected with a serum to become Captain America during World War II, battle the Red Skull, being frozen in ice, and also subsequently being revived in the present day to resume the role, but is horribly received.
Speak for yourself.
Holding only 9% on Rotten Tomatoes. Just like with the comics, the success of Iron Man, Hulk, and Thor movies paved the way for Marvel Studios to do the character true justice on the big screen, and director Joe Johnston was hired for the job. His background directing the period comic book movie The Rocketeer and working as a visual effects art director on Raiders of the Lost Ark made him an inspired choice for the pulp-style action of the movie, and many allusions to the Indiana Jones series appear in the film. Many actors were considered for the role of Steve Rogers, including John Krasinski, Garrett Hedlund, Ryan Phillippe, and Dane Cook, before Chris Evans was cast in the role. The movie follows the comic book origin quite closely, with Steve Rogers as a noble and kind-hearted young man growing up in 1940. He hopes to enlist in the army and fight for his country any way he can, but is rejected due to his skinny and frail body. Recruited for a secret experiment, he is again injected with a super soldier serum, and re-emerges with superhuman strength and speed. To achieve the look of a skinny, frail Steve Rogers, state-of-the-art visual effects were used to thin Evans down. In scenes where this was impractical, Evans performed the scene while a body double watched the performance, and then mirrored the same scene. The filmmakers would then flawlessly blend the two performances together, adding Evans' head over the top of the double's body. The filmmakers wanted to make his costume more practical and something that would actually be used during a war, so they modelled it on his Ultimates version of the character, appearing in Mark Millar's The Ultimates in 2005, and evolved it over the movie to his more traditional look. The movie saw Captain America go up against his most famous foe, the Red Skull, Also first appearing in Captain America Comics issue 1, the Red Skull started out as a mantle being passed on from character to character, each wearing a Red Skull-like mask. Eventually the main version of the character was introduced as Johann Schmidt, a bellboy called out by Hitler himself as someone more capable of leading Nazis when humiliating a subordinate. Personally training the bellboy, Schmidt took this as an opportunity to rise to power, moving up the ranks to become Hitler's right-hand man. The character of Johann Schmidt was changed in the movie to a scientist who used a more experimental version of the super soldier serum on himself, giving him strength but deforming his face and driving him insane. Australian actor Hugo Weaving was cast in the role and underwent 5 hours of makeup to achieve the look, which was then digitally altered to remove the tip of his nose and further thin out his cheeks to appear more skull-like. Weaving found the process uncomfortable and has expressed no interest in returning to the role for future cinematic universe installments, even though he is still contracted. In the movie, Schmidt is assisted by inventor Arnim Zola. In the comics, Zola was originally a Nazi biochemist, experimenting with genetic engineering during World War II, who transferred his consciousness into a robotic body that displayed a digital image of his face in a round screen directly in the middle of his chest. When the character first appears on screen, he is seen through a giant circular magnifying glass, alluding to this, and later in the movie, blueprints can be seen for designs for a similar robot body. Many changes were also made to Cap's supporting characters. Bucky Barnes was introduced in Captain America Comics issue 1 as a young mascot for the military base where Steve Rogers was stationed. One day he accidentally walks in on Steve Rogers changing into his costume and discovers his secret identity. Captain America has no choice but to make him a sidekick. In the movie though, he is the same age as Steve Rogers and a friend since childhood. Enlisting in the army, he is taken prisoner and saved by Cap, eventually fighting equally alongside him before plummeting to his death, which set him up for his return as the Winter Soldier in the sequel.
Bucky?
Heading up the missions is British intelligence agent Peggy Carter. Introduced in 1966 with Tales of Suspense issue 77, Peggy Carter was a French resistance fighter who was briefly in love with Steve Rogers until getting separated during the war when an exploding shell gave her amnesia. In the movie, Hayley Atwell plays the character completely reimagined as a strong-willed agent of the US government, actively involved in the war efforts. Sutter was setting up a lot of groundwork in the lead up to the Avengers, as well as being a standalone movie in itself. Detractors of the movie felt that it was burdened with setting up too many elements that would tie into the future of the cinematic universe, and giving little time to Cap being a leader in World War II, relegated mostly to montages. Therefore, the movie has many Easter eggs and references to both the future of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, as well as the comics scattered throughout. The suit Steve Rogers wears for the propaganda tour is almost an exact copy of the original costume, down to the wingtips on the ears, and even the ankle boots. The comics seen on screen are an exact replica of Captain America Comics issue 1, and the iconic cover image of Cap punching out Hitler is recreated during his stage show.
I've knocked that Adolf Hitler over 200 times.
Stan Lee appears as a general at a medal ceremony.
I thought he'd be taller.
Even though he didn't create the character, he did start writing from issue 3 and introduced the idea of the shield being used as an offensive weapon he would throw. Steve is seen sketching several times throughout the movie, alluding to him being an inspiring artist. The Red Skull explains that the Tesseract was the prized possession of Odin's treasure room, last seen in Thor, and references the World Tree that Thor explained to Jane Foster in Thor. Howard Stark, father of Tony Stark, showcases his gravitic reversion technology at the World Expo, a precursor to the repulsor technology used in the Iron Man suit, as well as designing Captain America's shield, built out of vibranium, the rare metal mined from Black Panther's homeland of Wakanda. At the same expo, the original Human Torch is showcased in a display cabinet. This is also a reference to Chris Evans playing a different version of the Human Torch character in 20th Century Fox's Fantastic Four movies.
Oh, that is cool.
Captain America the First Avenger gained a moderate success of $370 million from a budget of $140 million, and currently holds a rating of 79% on Rotten Tomatoes, paving the way for Captain America to return in both Avengers movies, the critically acclaimed sequel Captain America the Winter Soldier, and rounding out the trilogy with Captain America Civil War. Though significant changes were made to fit the cinematic universe, the spirit still stayed true to the character, who continues to be an inspirational icon not only for a single nation, but to the world at large too. Was there anything we missed, or any characters you'd like to learn more about? Leave your comments below. This has been Dylan Bowden for JoBlo.com, and we'll see you next time.